Hello everyone. Do you know that Kautilya is also referred as Machiavelli of India? Kautilya is famous for his ideas and primarily his strategic thought. So he wrote Arthashastra in 375 BC. So if we compare it from today, it would be more than 2300 years. So at that time he wrote this book called Kautilya's Arthashastra, in which he guided how the king should perform his duty, what should be his subjects, how his subjects should perform the duties, how governance would be maintained within the country's defined territory, how foreign policy is to be established vis-a-vis countries and within the state. So Kautilya emphasizes that knowledge is the key to everything. So you start emphasizing on hearing, then you make steady application on what you have heard. So after you have applied that knowledge, make it your self possession. So it stays with you, and this would ultimately lead to effectiveness of learning. So Kautilya described that what should be the life of a king. The life of the king should be that he shall restrain the organs of sense. He shall focus on acquiring wisdom by keeping the company of aged. So if he controls his senses, then only he can be able to govern himself as well. The person who has not control over his senses cannot govern himself and his outside as well. So, for a king, the primary role of king is governance. So, he has to govern so many things. So he has to take care of so many things. So, restraint of organs of sense is very crucial. The person who restrains his senses, he shall never be devoid of happiness. He shall enjoy all sorts of pleasure, all sorts of peace, happiness within himself. And sovereignty is only possible with assistance. He shall employ the ministers who hear his opinion. So there should be a communication between the king and his subjects. On to the creation of ministers, Kautilya argues that he shall employ classmates as his ministers, for they can be trusted by him as much as he has trust on them, and he has personal knowledge about them. So he shall employ only those ministers whose secrets are well known to him. And in case the king fears that his secrets might be betrayed, in that case the king needs to be extra cautious and vigilant and follow the actions of others, both good and bad, to protect himself. So basically, the king in that situation, he observes the conditions of others. He looks at the behavioral changes in his ministers, whether they know the secrets, whether they do not know the secret, whether they will spread the idea uh, ahead or whether they won't spread the idea ahead. Ministers should be appointed on the basis of their tried ability and not just because on their theoretical knowledge. Kautilya strictly emphasizes that simply having only theoretical knowledge and not having the practical knowledge can be lead to very disastrous results, and those disastrous results can degrade the quality of governance. in any country for that matter. The king shall employ a high priest and be a student under him. So basically, he should be under the guidance of an elderly person or a priest who can guide him in all matters in all spheres of life and governance. The king should also check whether the ministers he had appointed are loyal to him or not. He should test them by offering temptations, examine the character of ministers. Kautilya strictly emphasized that the king or queen shall not be the subjects to test the ministers. Instead, use of spies should be there to test the ministers. The use of spies can be used to make alterations in the behavior of the minister. These alterations can be religious arguments to manipulate the people loyalties. Same can go with the commander of army whose initiative is to murder the king. And in that case, romantic and material temptations are used to influence the decision of that person. He describes the institutions of spies. So, in Kautilya's Arthashastra, in his strategic thought, the spies play a crucial role in providing information to the king. So, the spy should pretend to be a loyal follower but secretly gathers information about others' wrongdoings. The king rewards him in that sense. Spy instructs him to report in any kind of suspicious activity. So the spy sees any kind of suspicious activity. His task is to report the king that this is this happening in your state. The spy lives a simple life. The king provides him with land, with money. He acts as an agriculturalist. He basically lives a normal life and tries to gather the information around him without being noticed. If he feels like he has been noticed, so in that case, he can pretend to be feel sick and can use poison or can act crazy in that sense. The communication between the spy and his organization should be in the form of signs, keeping the identities hidden. Spies can also act like a disguise in the shape of a monk, and they can basically uh, provide religious teachings to the people in that locality, in that surrounding, and should gather the information and the knowledge from the people on social issues, on the matters relating to crime, etc. He defines spies in different types. Spies can be women, they can be people from foreign backgrounds, they can be merchants, they can be religious saints, and they can be forest dwellers and tribal leaders. Spies are tasked with knowing the rumors that are circulating in the state, and he should know the opponents of the king's authority. So this is where the classmate spies comes into being. So they act as like they are the supporters of the opposition, but they simultaneously engages in debates, and through that debates they gather intelligence and they provide this intelligence to the king. In order to achieve their task, the spies can either be in a pact with another person, they can try to persuade him, or they can try to convince him. Now, Kotalia describes what should be the council meeting and how it should look like. So, before administrative decisions, the king should ensure that he has the support of both local and foreign faction in his own and enemy states. And he should, take this important point into consideration, that all the important decisions must be proceeded by the council. Secrecy is so much crucial that Kautilya argues that even the birds can send messages. Birds can also lead to the transmission of messages from one place to another. Anyone who reveals will face severe consequences. Changes in the behavior of the ministers can mark whether they have leaked the information or not. Carelessness, intoxication, and bad habits can be the reason for the spread of information within the council meeting. King should deliberate alone on the sensitive matters. Opinions of even child should be taken into consideration, and wise council ministers should be appointed. Kautilya advises that the size of the council should match the needs of the kingdom. Majority opinions, course of action should guide the king's decision. So Kautilya moreover argues that like a tortoise, the king should conceal his strategic intentions until the right time, and only well versed in the subject in the field of politics should be allowed in the council meetings. Now we will look at the role of envoys. Envoys are basically the representatives who are sent to another territory, basically the receiving state. So an envoy who has excelled as counselor becomes an envoy. In modern terminology, they are the diplomats. They should strategize how to deceive the enemy and to achieve their objectives in the foreign land. Upon reaching the enemy's territory, he should befriend like those in charge of borders, cities, and rural areas. And basically, he should act in a friendly manner with those who are the in charge, who are the governors of the city, who are the people of rural areas as well. The envoy must gather intelligence and the enemy's military capacity as well, and the fortifications, and should also notice the vulnerable points in the foreign land that he has been. So Kautilya's ideas here we see are moving in the direction of realism. Realism suggests that your national interest is the key priority. So in fulfillment of national interest, you can use various methods. So in Kautilya's timings, use of envoys as your representatives to ensure that the king's ideas or the national interest of that country is achieved and is fulfilled. Kautilya argues that the envoy should present his missions and objectives even at risk, even if the enemy is displeased. The envoy can argue that messengers are the representatives of the king and should not be harmed. So, if they are harmed, it means they are a threat to the country's sovereignty. They should, achieve their task even if they deliver unwelcoming messages as well. The envoy should remain humble and vigilant, avoiding distraction. Information gathered should be tested through various intrigues, observation of the public, discussions, symbols, and hidden messages. So basically, a diplomat, when he goes into foreign land, he should carefully observe the public's decisions, public observation. So, for example, if you are a diplomat and then you travel to North Korea, so as a diplomat, you will easily find the public discussions, what type of discussion they have, what type of observation they are doing. So in North Korea's case, the observations would be that people are only focusing on leaders ideas, leaders objectives. They don't have their own life. And and you may see that there are rich people, but there are also poor people as well. So, poor people, a lot of them can be found in North Korea. The fake happiness you can well read on their minds, on their face as well. Envoys are useful to uphold the treaties and for the transmission of messages and to counter the enemy's strategies. On to the agency of prince. Before security of the kingdom, one should secure himself. So the king should secure himself and his son as well, his heir or his descendant. Spies, along with their peers, should guide them and prevent them from indulging in harmful activities. This is vital to avoid wicked and unstable situation, that if there is an unstable situation and a wicked condition arrives, the spies and their agency might assist the king in getting a possible way out. And on to the selection of the heir. The king should foster capable heirs. The prince should be loyal towards his father. If his father favors others unfairly, he can request for a forest life. Either he can make alliance with the neighboring king, or he can live independently of his own. But if he poses threat to the king himself, the king can resort to imprisonment or even elimination. Kautilya provides a guide onto the duties of the king, that the king shall divide day and night into 8 parts, each part being 1.5 hours long. In the daytime, he should manage finances, overseeing citizens, ruler affairs, personal activities like bathing, studying, revenue collection, correspondence with ministers, and military supervision. In the night time, he should receive secret messages, personal care, and waking up with the review of daily tasks. Kautilya further emphasized that the king must be accessible to his people and not make them wait unnecessarily. Direct involvement prevents confusion and discontent. So, if the king is actively engaged in the public hearings and he actively listens the problems of the people, so there is a high chances, a high possibility to reduce the chances of confusion and discontent. Prioritize the happiness and welfare of his subjects. This should be the king's sole priority. And inactivity leads to loss and decline. So the king should always be in some or the other activity, and he should regularly take care of his public. Personal safety of the king is also important. The selection of personal attendants should be appointed, and those that have generational ties, those who are close relatives, those who are well trained and loyal individuals, those who have rendered good service. So they should be appointed as the king's personal attendants. The Kautilya further emphasized the role of physicians, poison experts, who are always present to detect and treat poison, so as to ensure the safety of king. The king should ride chariots and animals that are approved. In case of a meeting and engagement with some another person, he should be with the guard so as to ensure his safety. Before meeting, the route must be also cleared with the use of the agency of spies. So, spies will play a crucial role ensuring the personal safety of the king and taking precautions against external threats. On to the second book, The Duties of Government Superintendents. So, who are superintendents? Superintendents are those officials or administrators who oversee and manage various aspects of governance administration within the kingdom. They play a crucial role in maintaining law and order, managing of resources, and ensuring that there is effective functioning of the state. So let us first understand the structure of the villages and other things before moving on to the duties of government superintendents. So villages are created by the king to manage the population growth and utilize land resources effectively. This involves resettling the people from densely populated areas within the kingdom. So each village consists of around 100 to 50 agricultural families from Shudra caste. Villages demarcated by natural features like rivers, like mountains, like forests, or by artificial boundaries, and they cover an area of around 2,250 yards. Forts are constructed along the boundaries of a village and so as to secure the safety of that area. The internal security of the region is managed by trap keepers, archers, hunters, and other guards. In Kautilya's Arthashastra, the task of the king is to promote economic activities, mining, manufacturing, cattle breeding, and commerce. He constructs roads, reservoirs, market towns, and pilgrimages, and also create sites to facilitate trade and pilgrimage, and ensures that there is social welfare of the people. Punishments are specified for those who neglect the responsibilities and abandon their property. Local communities are protected from descriptive influences like entertainment groups. King ensures the infrastructure and maintenance. So basically, the king has to ensure all these kinds of things so as to achieve his goal on social welfare. On to the division of lands, the king should allocate pasture lands or grounds, and some of the forests are named after Brahmins, and those areas are designated to the people for cultivating soma plants, religious practices, meditation, and special forests created by the king for recreational activities. There are also reserved forests to produce various forest products and manufacturing facilities. Forests like timber forest, wild tracts, elephant forest, managed and appointed by superintendents and guards. So they take care of all these different types of forest. The Kautilya also talks about the role of elephants as they are crucial in the warfare due to their size and their capability to destroy the enemy formations, fortifications, and can perform hazardous tasks. Elephants like Kalinga, Anga are considered superior. Those from the western regions are of medium quality. Onto the construction of forts. Fortifications are strategically built on kingdom boundaries. So there are different types of forts that Kautilya distinguishes them. So that first is the water forts located on the islands or plains surrounded by the low ground. Then there are mountain forts or parvata built on rocky areas or caves. Then there are desert forts established in barren and waterless wilderness. Then there are forest forts. These forest forts are located in obviously forested areas with natural defense. The king's capital city is fortified at the center of sovereignty. So, sovereignty is the key feature of Kautilya's Arthashastra and it should be maintained at all cost. And ideally, the king's fort is situated near rivers, lakes, or deep pools. There are three concentric ditches with flowing water, crocodiles, and lotus plants. And there is also a high earthen rampart surrounding the ditches, reinforced by poisonous plant, so that if one has to enter the king's fort, he cannot enter it easily. So the gates are closed, and there are ditches. Ditches are filled with waters, and there are even dangerous animals like crocodile and above that there are also poisonous plants which can damage the enemy significantly. The inside structure of the fort presents us the streets. Streets between towns are covered and they are divided into compartments. Compartments like channels. Wooden platforms are constructed for the archers and are built between towns. Gates for the entry and exit are carefully constructed so as to secure the fort and to secure mechanisms to prevent elephant entry. Buildings within the fort include halls, wells, boundary houses, and multi story structures with secret staircases and ornamental arches. Weapons include cannon, stones, and explosives that are capable of mass destruction. So, Kautilya emphasizes the strategic importance of location. So, location is very important for your kingdom or your rule to be established. So, if we look from Delhi Sultanat's perspective, the center of administration was Delhi. So, as to keep governance on all four sides of India, be it north, be it west, be it east, be it south. So within fort, the ground is divided by six royal roads running from east west to north south. There are 12 gates, each with both land and water access. And confidentiality is also kept for the security purposes. There are chariot roads, royal roads, and even elephant roads for special purposes. Wider roads are created to ease the movement. Royal buildings are placed strategically on strong ground within the fort. King's Palace occupies a central location, covering one-ninth of the entire fort area, facing either north or the east. Adjacent to the place are the sites of royal teachers, priests, and sacrificial places, and even water reservoirs and the living compartments of ministers. Merchants, artisans, and kshatriyas reside on the eastern side. The treasury, the accountant's office, and the manufacturing facilities are situated in the southeast. Superintendents, traders, and other residents are placed in distinguished areas. Every 10th house are provided with water well. Fort is stocked with various necessities like oil, grains, medicines, and weapons. Boundary guards and fort repairs are appointed strategically to maintain security. So now moving on to the duties of Chamberlain. In Kautilya's Arthashastra, the Chamberlain, or also we can say Antapalika, refers to an important official who holds a position of trust and authority within the royal court. The Chamberlain's role includes various administrative, ceremonial, and sometimes judicial functions. So, the Chamberlain oversees the construction of various important buildings like treasury, trading house, grain storehouse, forest produce storehouse, and armory and jail. Now, on to the construction details, just a brief backdrop. The treasury house is built on a very special underground, above a very special underground chamber with 3 stories, which is well protected and is maintained properly. Trading house is a quadrangular building with one entrance and brick pillars and compartments. So, for storehouses, there are spacious rooms that are separated and have sections for forest produce and connected to underground chamber and armory. There are court and ministerial office separated from other buildings. As far as jail is concerned, separate accommodations for men and women are taken care of with proper security. And there is also provision of rain gauge. A bowl to measure the rainfall is placed in front of the storehouse. So this is a very unique thing which we find in Kautilya's Arthashastra. On to the Chamberlain. The Chamberlain, with trusted aides, handles revenue collection. He must have thorough knowledge of the finances. He should be able to report the exact net balance after expenses at any time. Chamberlain duties include overseeing construction, managing valuable items, finances, ensuring proper measurements and quality of goods, and punishing misconduct. So, further moving on to duties of the general character, or we can say the duties of collector general. So, in forts, there are tolls, fines, town clerk, coinage seals, liquor, slaughter of animals, threads, oil, ghee, sugar, goldsmith, warehouse taxes from gates and other region. So these things are present inside the fort. Kotalia also describes different forms of revenue. So there are different types of revenue. Revenue can be the initial investment or the government's portion of the produce or the profit earned from various price variations or the set amounts it can be or the extra charge on coins or it can be even the penalties for violations. So these are the forms of revenue that we find in Kautilya's Arthashastra. So one would argue that why so many taxes? So the answer to this question is that there was a diverse economy at that time. The collection of revenue ensures stability and security, and it also promotes fairness and equity. Redistribute tax burden equitably and can provide economic insights as well. The business of keeping up the accounts held in the office of accountants. So the accountant's office should have its door facing the north or east. It should have separate seats for clerks and should have organized shelves for account books. The office must keep detailed records of various departments and should provide a detailed statistical data of work, results, profit and loss, expenditure, etc. Record must include historical data to ensure accountability. Gifts to the king, courtiers, their entitlements, tax remissions, and the provisions for the king's family should be documented as well. Accountants must provide regular reports on the current work, completed tasks, ongoing tasks, receipts, and net balances of each department. If a government worker is absent, then the compensation must be taken for any loss caused. The work year is 364 days. Payment should be proportional to the work done by the end of the month. Government officials causing revenue loss either by laziness, either by cruelty, either by greed will be fined proportionally to the loss they have caused. Accounts should be verified thoroughly and alternative checks should be made. Minor mistakes can be forgiven and the superintendents providing significant benefits to the kings are rewarded. Late submission of the accounts will result in heavy fines. Cordelia further explains us that embezzlement by the government servants can lead to misappropriation of state's resources, funds, assets, or personal gains. Kotalia recognized the potential for corruption within the administration and proposed various measures to detect and prevent it. He argues that all activities depend on finance, so treasury must be closely monitored. Financial prosperity achieved by the public prosperity. Kotalia defines causes of financial loss. It could be delay or fail to start a project by the officials. It could be lending government money for the interest. It could be using government's money for personal trade, like in the British era, we used to see like the misuse of dastaks or the trade permits by the East India Company officials. Methods of embezzlement can be either by incorrect entries of timings that have been registered by the officials. naming the uncollected revenue as collected revenue, manipulating the false weights and measures. Informants shall review rewards on one-sixth from the outsiders and one-twelfth from the government servants. Kotalya argues that qualified individuals should be appointed as superintendents of various government departments. They are examined daily because people are like horses and they can be unpredictable. Their behavior can change. So you have to regularly examine them, and they can be examined by the use of agencies of spies. They must work without arguments. Alliances can lead to corruption. Penalties can be caused by carelessness or can lead to fine. Spending too much and bringing in little revenue can be seen as a theft, while meeting or exceeding revenue targets is not possible. The chief officer must thoroughly examine the work done, revenue collected, and expenses incurred. Kotalya also describes the inevitability aspect. The inevitability aspect is that it is almost impossible for government servant to resist taking some kind of king's revenue. It is similar to tasting honey or poison at the tongue's lip. Detecting government servants' theft is difficult. It is as difficult to catch them like it is to a fish drinking underwater or tracking birds in the sky. The servants who remain royal should be made permanent to their positions. There is also a procedure of forming royal writers. So, writers are basically those people who are crucial for the kings as they influence treaties, decisions related to the war, or any matter instance. A qualified writer should be skilled in composition and should have legible writing. The writer should listen carefully to the king's orders and write down them thoroughly. Kotalya mentions some considerations for writing. The writer should be a considered person and he should consider the addressee's caste, his family, his social rank, his property, his character, his place, or his time. He should have good arrangement, relevancy, competentness, and dignity and clarity. The facts presented in order and no contradictions between facts should be made. There should be no unnecessary or missing words. The style of the writer should be pleasant and impressive as well. Use of formal language is essential. Kotalya even talks about the structure of language. He describes that sentences are group of words that are used to convey the message and have complete meanings. Sentences should be short, clear, and usually not more than 3 words. So, what is the purpose of these writers? The purpose of them is that they can be used for asking questions, explaining something, praising someone, ordering, and seeking peace and reconciliation vis-a-vis countries, vis-a-vis states as well, and can be used to warn of the consequences. If, for example, if there is a battle, that is taking place or is ought to take place. So they can use the writers to send message to the other adversary that look, that you should not start the war, otherwise you would face its consequences. There should be also taken care of that the writer should avoid repetition, bad grammar, disagreement, contradiction, or clumsiness. Now, moving on to the sovereignty aspect, which is essential in the Kautilya's Arthashastra. So, Kautilya's define elements of sovereignty as first the king himself, second the minister, third the country, fourth the fortresses, fifth the treasury, sixth the army, and seventh the allies or friends. So he further elaborates what are the qualities of a good king. That a good king is by virtue exercises truthfulness, he has wisdom, he has the ability to judge wisely through advice from the elders, effective leadership in managing ministers, and he is committed to discipline and justice. Kodalia further defines types of neutrality. Neutrality can be maintained either by adopting a particular policy or either withdrawing from hostile actions for self interest or taking no steps against the enemy. This lays the foundations of Kautilya's most important six-fold theory in the Arthashastra, which is the set of strategies that a king or ruler can use in international relations. These strategies help a ruler to decide how to interact with the other state based on their strength, intentions, and circumstances. So basically, it defines the conduct of states. So in today's timings, we have the realist conduct of state. In earlier timings, this Kautilya six-fold policy or theory describe the conduct of state in international relations and in what instances he should interact. This is also mentioned. So first point is the peace. While making a treaty with or an agreement with another state, when you are weaker than the other side and need to buy time to build your strength, it allows you to avoid conflict and focus on growing your power. So basically, when you are weak, you need time to build your strength, and this allows you to avoid conflict and focus on growing power. The second point is war. When you are stronger or believe you can defeat the other state, it can help you to expand your territory, your resources, and your influence. And this can be done by engaging in battle or conflict. Third is neutrality. When you want to avoid unnecessary conflicts and maintain your current position, staying neutral is the key and not taking sides in conflict between the other state. So it keeps you out of the trouble and allows you to focus on internal matters, which is today very important from a foreign policy perspective. That if we examine the India's intervention in Sri Lanka and the Sri Lankan civil war, that heavily affected the India's foreign policy and it led to the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi. Fourth is marching. So, what it means is preparing your army to move against another state, either for attack or defense. So, when to use it? When you need to show your strength, deter an enemy, or prepare for an offensive uh, decision. So it is useful as it demonstrates your readiness and can intimate potential threats. Fifth is the alliance. Alliance means forming a partnership with another state. So you use it because you need support against a common enemy or when you can get benefit from the alliance. It is useful as it provides mutual benefits such as military support, resources, or political backing. The best example in today's IR can be the NATO alliance, which is still relevant today. So, alliance declares that war on one means war on all. Attack on one means attack on all. So, sixth policy is double policy, using the combination of above strategies simultaneously when needed. So, it is useful in a complex situation when it requires a flexible approach. Why it is useful? It allows you to adapt the changing circumstances and keep your options open. So, this is all about the Kautilya's Arthashastra from polity to governance to international relations. Thank you, and we will meet in another video. Stay tuned.